something, Roger, that what you say brings to mind is early on, I've had very little verbal communication with the visitors, even though they were in my life for 11 years when we had our cabin in upstate New York. There was not a lot of verbal communication. It was mostly in pictures, and I got to the point where I was pretty comfortable with doing that, and I learned ways of communicating that I'm still struggling to make use of. It's why one of the reasons I've turned to fiction is that there are things I can't figure out how to say that I learned from them during this. But one of the things that was said verbally was really very interesting, and at the time it was said, I took it as a kind of mystical or spiritual statement. It was, "We will come from within you." And I learned subsequently, when I heard anything, they said anything, it meant everything it could mean. In other words, the words meant everything they could mean. Then a few years later, I began to hear about implants. Then I began to hear the skeptics community saying, without physical proof, we cannot accept the existence of this. And then I heard about this doctor, Roger Lier, who was actually taking implants out. I was exploring this. I tried with a doctor in New York. We did MRI scans of a group of people who couldn't find anything, and then suddenly it just started to happen. And I thought, we will come from within you. It means physically, as well as other ways. And what he's doing is focusing this. The skeptics community is getting quieter and quieter because they're facing the fact that it's not skepticism, but denial, and that it emerges out of some deep place that most of them are not really aware of, where they are themselves being manipulated. And the result is that the knowledge that people like Dr. Roger Lier and the surgeons who work with him are gathering is being left by the wayside. When and Roger, I introduced him to Dr. Bill Mallow at Southwest Research, and Roger and Bill used to struggle to get this data out, and you couldn't do it because the scientific community would not acknowledge its existence, because official denial supports and serves emotional denial. The knowledge is out there, and somewhere in that knowledge are two things. One is viable, functional contact that we can actually use, and two, waiting for us if we would just take a look at it, if science would just look at it, is physical knowledge, because of people like him coming from within us. Incredible, I think.
Well, thank you, Whitley. I mean, that certainly asserts the importance of what we find. But, you know, I think from what I've seen, I've been in 42 countries in 7 years. And I've talked to a lot of people. Many of them don't speak English, and I had to use an interpreter. But the one thing that I found, George, you there? Okay.
I'm used to commercial breaks.
Okay. One of the things I found all over the world is young people are different. They are not the same human being as myself. Now, they have certain capabilities, things that they can do, and things that are measurable, quantitative. And I've measured 17 functional growth characteristics in children born within a 40-year period, from 1947 to 1987. And we found that these functional growth characteristics, like what the age is that a baby raises its head, stands up, takes their first steps, stair climbs, the first age of simple speech, complex speech, all these have been accelerated from 16 to 80%. Now, if you think evolution is a viable entity, this is not evolution. It's not environment because it's worldwide. There are kids that don't have enough to eat There are kids that are born in very dubious circumstances with mothers who have taken crack and other narcotics. Some are alcoholics. Various areas of the world in which there's devastating climate, floods, famine. The rule is if the child survives, the statistics hold. Now what does that mean and how is that related to implants? I believe that those that are doing the abduction work, and we don't know exactly who they are or where they come from, they may be manipulating our genetics. Now, if you claim it came from Planet Glug and you came down here and watched what we do, you would either find it very entertaining or you would have tears in your eye. You know, you can just picture sitting up there and look what these humans are doing. My God, today they're burning up half the earth. And oh God, look, they're having a big fight and there's explosions and they're blowing up these weapons and there's magnetic fields going out into space. What a wonderful bunch of people. So maybe somebody, maybe it's not even altruistic, but maybe somebody cares enough to help solve the problem. Well, where's the problem? Jordan just gave you the problem. The problem is us. So how do you repair this problem? You've got to change us. And that might be what's going on.
Thank you, Ray.
Let's hope.
Good perspective. Jay, does Hollywood try to leak us these messages to kind of temper things a little bit?
Well, yeah, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm absolutely sure of that. And Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I'm sure they don't know what they're doing. And I take Sundays off. But I don't know. I think so. I think you know, I do believe with what Jordan believes, which is that there is a group of people who are more or less in charge of our society. And I know they release the money for Hollywood films to be made. And there does seem to be a curve, a learning curve, whether you start in the 50s with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and you move up to 2001 where a sense of sophistication kind of comes into the whole thing, and then Spielberg began adding more and more things, and now we're to the point where Hollywood is trying to scare us with the alien, and which, you know, is one of the main questions that I would like to get from these guys. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you think it's benevolent, but a lot of the information doesn't look benevolent, and I worry sometimes that this invasion isn't benevolent. And I was wondering if you guys are like familiar with the works of John Lash and the Nag Hammadi text and the Archons, and I was wondering what you guys think of the Archons and this invasion that was purported to be happening 2,000 years ago. Whitley, what do you think of them?
Well, you know, it's a huge issue in my life because I'm out here as a kind of I've ended up being an ambassador in a sense for something, and I certainly hope what is behind that door isn't going to be terribly disappointing to us, because we've had enough, haven't we? I mean, we've got so much trouble on our planet. The population explosion isn't our fault. It's a side effect of the configuration of our bodies, and the fact that toward the middle of the last ice age, the species was nearly wiped out, and during that process lost its seasonality. So the result is we have many too many babies.